look, at the moment, a pretty good result for Labor. Clearly, their rejigged stage 3 tax cuts have done the trick in keeping those Labor booths and keeping that Labor primary vote steady, in fact, a little improved. As Anthony was explaining, that Liberal vote's up a hell of a lot more, and that's because you don't have One Nation, you don't have the Palmer United Party standing, and those votes on the right have come back in to the Liberal Party there. So look, as Tony was saying earlier, there's a bit of something for everyone in this. But for Labor here, Cos, there was so much nervousness heading into tonight, they'd be pretty confident right now, wouldn't they, that the tax cuts have done the trick?
Yes, and if the next election is determined on the cost of living crisis, it looks like the campaign that Labor is running and the government they're running at the moment is working for them. One of the polls that we published earlier this year had Labor 10% in front of the coalition when it comes to managing the economy and the affordability crisis. So it looks like that brand equity is actually delivering them some significant support. The other point I'd like to make is that the Liberal Party and Advance Australia have become very good at preaching to their base, and what's going on here is that right flank is being animated and it's boosting up their primary and it's hoovering up all those votes.
So Advance is hoovering up the right flank to the Libs, but not so much the centre.
Not a single dent to anyone on the Labor side of politics.
Their message was put Labor last.
Yep. Hasn't worked.
And that hasn't worked. All right.
That's interesting.
Just quickly, a very senior Labor source saying they're not calling it yet, but they are feeling increasingly confident. And Tony, they probably have good reason to be.
Yeah, it's hard to see Liberal Party sort of winning from here. Look, they could come home with a wet sail on the postals and pre-polls and get to 48 on the 2PP, which I think is, probably a par result. But the real story tonight is the Labor primary vote holding, consistent to the last election, despite being under sustained pressure.
We've heard lots of other messages this week. It hasn't just been cost of living, boat people, the discussion around that, and of course, Utes has been chucked in. Are any of these messages resonating?
National sovereignty is still an important value to voters, but relative to cost of living, it's not in the same stratosphere. And so that was sort of fragmenting a message that, the Liberal Party should have been, Advance Australia was trying to drive down the Labor primary vote, which hasn't worked. And so, as we said at the start of the program, you need repetition and reach for these messages to work. You also need to identify through polling what that soft Labor vote are responding to. And there was no evidence in the research Cos and I saw that they were responding to boat people or the High Court decision. What they were responding to was the fact that they had negative cash flow, that they were struggling to make ends meet, and that groceries were, becoming more unaffordable. I
want to go to Richard Willingham. He's at the Labor function tonight. He's been spending a fair bit of time there in Dunkley through this campaign. Rich, what's your analysis of the sort of results we're seeing at the moment?
I think one of the really interesting things is the fact we're seeing that Labor's primary vote is just so stable. You talk to people on going to vote this week, and there was so much apathy, and so it's sort of people looks like they've just gone to vote because they have to vote. They're not sort of animated. They've gone about their business and just tick the box. They're sort of happy with the status quo. On the left side, I think that's what you're just alluding to as well, and more on the right side, it's come back. Really interested in the fact the Greens primary is down so much. So obviously they were a place where people parked their votes the last election, and at the federal election they've decided we'll put the Greens here. They've come back, so maybe that's that Mount Eliza area. But you've got to say that the mood in here a couple of hours ago was quite nervous. They were very cautious about what was going to happen. They kept saying it's going to be very tight, it's going to be a long night. The mood has changed. Look, they're not calling it yet, as your source said as well, David, but the mood inside this place is improved a lot. There's a lot more people upbeat. Every time Anthony's on the screen, he always gets a cheer, but the cheers are louder, I think, this time because the results are starting to go. And every time that the bar is moving, the swing is getting smaller, the confidence in this room is growing.
Well, you said at the start of the night, Rich, that anger wasn't there, that you weren't picking it up in your time. And I found similar last week, and that primary vote for Labor sort of shows that, doesn't it?
I think just feels like people weren't motivated to change. And I think you're talking to people here who have been out manning those polling booths. None of them, there was a nervousness, but none of them were fearful. I know that, it's splitting hairs, but there was that sense that people were happy, they were frustrated with a lot of issues, but they were happy with the way things are. And there's no sort of warning shot. This is one of those by-elections that's the free swing. You can have a free swing in the government, can send them a message, and it doesn't appear to be there. I think I'm putting it down to a lot of apathy. People who just want to vote and get on with it. I don't think they're really sort of motivated to make a change. So the Labor Party may look at that as a tick. It's not what Peter Dutton would want to be hearing. Obviously, they need to big changes. And this is Victoria. It's a problematic place. But if you're the Labor Party, you'd probably be sitting okay with where it is right now. And that's generally the mood right now in the room.
Yeah. Rich, thank you very much. Richard Willingham there, our state political reporter in Victoria. Jane Hume is the shadow finance spokesperson and also a very senior Liberal senator. Jane Hume, that swing has really narrowed. Are you now very nervous that you are not going to win this seat tonight?
PK, the mood here is still really buoyant. There's an awful lot of volunteers that have come out to support Nathan Conroy over the last couple of weeks, particularly the last fortnight and today, and they're really happy to see that dial moving in the right direction. Now, obviously, primary votes, has gone up for Labor as well as for the Liberal Party, but we're still really happy here. This is really exciting. Last year, when we had the Aston by-election, the mood was very different indeed.
Oh, there's no doubt,
really
but we are now
here.
in a real cost of living crisis, and yet you're still falling significantly short of getting a seat which is bearing the brunt of this cost of living crisis. Surely that's disappointing.
Well, PK, last year we were in the midst of a cost of living crisis as well, and what happened? The Labor Party went ahead with a voice referendum that the people of Dunkley clearly said they didn't want.
But I'm talking about now.
That's played out of the ballot boxes. That's played out of the ballot boxes. There's an awful lot of really goodwill towards Nathan Conroy, who has been such a good candidate because he's done so well as the mayor for Frankston, and we would hope that we see him. There's still a very positive sense in this room. Sorry, it's really hard to hear you guys.
No, I appreciate that. And we thank you
it's very buoyant in this room.
For bearing with us. Look, appreciate that. As well as he might have campaigned, it doesn't look like he's going to win the seat. You did the campaign review after the last election for the Liberals. A lot of that really focused on Victoria, why it's been such a problem for the Liberal Party. Have the things been done in Victoria that the Liberal Party needs to do, the sort of things that you talked about in that review, do you think you've done enough?
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the things that the review focused on, and that was the coordination of campaigns at a local level, talking about local issues, and that's exactly what this campaign did. We got more people out on the ground, we got more people talking directly to voters, and I think that's beginning to play out in the figures. It's a really good feeling here. I know you guys are looking at polls coming or numbers coming in. That's not the sense that we get in this room. There's still some big numbers that we want to see, postal votes, pre-poll votes, and can I tell you that the volunteers here are really proud of the work that they put in. They're really proud of the campaign team, and most of all, they're really proud of Nathan Conroy.
Ultimately, a lot of the analysis tonight has been that because One Nation and Clive Palmer's party haven't run in this election, you're kind of hoovering up a lot of those votes rather than taking votes off Labor. Do you agree with that analysis?
I wouldn't say that just yet. I think it's probably a little too early to tell. There were some independents in the field. The Libertarian Party was in the field, and they may well have mopped up some of those votes. I thought that the Greens candidate was nowhere to be seen, and I think that's beginning to play out in those figures. But, let me reiterate again. Peter Murphy was a really popular local member. There was an awful lot of goodwill that was directed towards her. I think that the figure that I heard was that the last time that after the passing away of a local member, there was a by-election, and it switched sides was like 1966. I think it was the same time as St Kilda won their last grand final. So, and I know how long that's been.
Yes, that's been a really long time. Whereas Collingwood last year. Anyway,
Okay, PK.
no one.
Jane Hume, thank you. Appreciate you joining us once more. Look, Tony Barry, just getting back to some of these figures, where the swings are happening. Listening to Jane Hume, you know the Victorian division very well. She's talking about, yes, they have made positive change since the last election on the ground in Victoria. Has it been enough?
No, clearly not. We'd want to see a result, closer to 49, 48% when postals are finished counting. Still might get there. That'll be a commendable result. But I don't think we're seeing enough to suggest that the Liberal Party is going to be competitive in Victoria. We only hold 6 out of 38 seats. And there's 150 seats in the new parliament after the redistribution.
And in metropolitan Melbourne, it's only 3.
3. So unless we get competitive in there, this idea we're going to get to 76 seats and win government when 38 of them are in Victoria and we're only competitive in
So what's the
6.
missing piece of the puzzle for the Libs?
Well, I think there's extensive brand damage for the Liberal Party in Victoria, and that's been a long time coming. That's been a combination of various state presidents, state directors, candidates in the field, and the Liberal Party itself, which is constantly fighting amongst itself, and they're undermining John Pizzuto at the moment, which is another dimension to the Liberal Party brand damage. We've had a series of ball bags at the headquarters of Liberal Party, whether it be state directors and state presidents who have been focused on internal fighting, internal contests, and not the external contest. So the Liberal Party still has a lot of work to do in Victoria, and I don't think tonight's result would be particularly encouraging for the national brand.
But it can't just be at an organisational level that the problem exists, right? I mean, obviously, this is a campaign where the Labor, Liberal, national brands were up against each other in a really focused way. What does Peter Dutton have to do to realise his dream of this strategy of the suburban seats? Because it's just not working in a seat like this at a time when, you would think people, after 12 interest rate rises, would be pretty cranky.
Well, the big thing is, 10 years ago today, the Liberal Party held the seat of Dunkley. We also held the 4 state seats within Dunkley, which is Hastings, Frankston, Carrum and Mornington. Today we hold 1 out of 5. So clearly something's going wrong when this is not Labor heartland or Labor territory. This used to be good Liberal Party territory. And look, encouraging signs tonight. There was a primary vote climb. We did, yes, some of those right-wing parties weren't in the field, but you always want to climb your primary vote. And we've done that.
Look, Richard Miles made the point earlier, there are always lessons when you break down the results in a seat. Looking at what we can see so far, Cos, what are the lessons for Labor tonight?
Well, the big lesson is, as I stated before, is that they seem to be holding on to the votes that the Liberal support they secured in 2022. That doesn't mean they're out of the woods. It only got them a slight majority at the last federal election. But the other point here is that the lesson that should be taken out of this also and goes to the broader conversation that Tony was just touching on, that we also cannot ignore demographics. So 41% of voters in this electorate are under the age of 42. They are now the biggest cohort in this electorate. They are those proportions are the same in most outer suburban seats in our large cities. The coalition only secures 1 in 5 of those voters across the entire country. Tonight doesn't look like that's changed.
No.
Yeah.
Let's go to Anthony Green, who's got some more numbers for us. Anthony.
The votes, I think we've got, 42.9, 31 of the 36 polling places. I think we've got 2 pre-polls and 3 polling places left to come. Labor still leads on first preferences. Now, just a point on talking about first preferences. Of the minor parties, 60% of preferences are flowing to Labor. So if Labor is ahead on first preferences, they will win after preferences as well. So the Liberal Party need to turn around that lead before they can get the chance, and it's been consistent all evening. And we're projecting based on the trends in the polling places and assuming pre-polls and stuff to come, is that Labor will continue to lead on first preferences. The two-party preferred swing that we're seeing at the moment, 24 is 2.9%, so the swing now is down under 3%. This is getting very close to being unturnable around, if such a word.
Irreversible.
Irreversible is probably, that's a, yes.
Let's go with that one.
Let's go and actually have a look at the map, because we're getting some more polling places come in. The results we're seeing at the moment, again, this is just a repeat of the map from last time. It's just the Labor booths are a little bit down and the Liberal votes are a little bit up. And if we look at the swing by polling place, look, it's mainly to the Liberal Party. There's a couple that have swung to Labor, but the swings are not above 6%. Most of them are under 6%, and the overall calculation we're getting is about a 3% swing. So at this stage, Labor is still well on track to win this by-election. I just think we need to just hang on for a few minutes rather than jump ahead of ourselves.
Okay. But I heard the word minutes there. Sorry, Anthony, I don't mean to read into it too much, but you think it will be soon?
I'm not sure what the time is, but I think it would be soon. As once we've got all the polling places in, you can do a calculation and say, well, the coalition needs, the Liberal Party needs this much amongst the postals and pre-polls to win. Some of these by-elections do turn on. Just as an example, there was an 8% gap, a huge gap at the referendum, very different circumstances between pre-polls and on-the-day votes. So if that was repeated, it would narrow. I do think, in fact, they're further ahead on the raw numbers. So look, we'll have another look at the numbers.
OK, we will. Thank you, Anthony. Anthony Green there. We're going to throw now back to Gemma Vaness with more of today's news.
PK, David, thank you. Australia needs another 7 wickets and New Zealand is chasing a record 4th innings score in the men's first test at Wellington. Glenn Phillips starred with the ball as Australia was dismissed for a modest total before the tourists fought back.